Friends, before I continue, I emphasize the Kasoma Farouk of Uganda idea to you. No one is coming. No one is what? Your government is busy. Your family is busy. Even your friends are what? Busy. It's upon you to liberate yourself. So we are saying, in this kind of arrangement, we are going to revisit a very great number. The French Revolution of 1789 was inevitable. So we are saying the French Revolution was a fundamental change, socially, politically, and economically, that took place in France, where the masses of the middle class, peasants, and the disgruntled nobility rose up against the despotic Bourbon monarchy. It is said the nobles and the clergy were 2 millions. The peasants were 23 what? Millions. But it is said the nobles and the clergy who were 2 millions were celebrating life, and the peasants were meant to cry. It is this that made the peasants to rise up and stage what? Revolution. So we are saying, among the key causes, the despotic system of government of the Bourbon monarchy. So our question, the French Revolution of 1789 was inevitable. So the despotic system of government of the Bourbon monarchy. So we are saying the Bourbon monarchy was so despotic. In other words, the Bourbon monarchy under Louis XVI was not giving freedom to the people. Louis XVI had only one advisor, that was Marie Antoinette. You remember at one time Mirabeau said that Louis has one man around him, and that man is his wife. In other words, the despotic nature of Louis XVI of the Bourbon monarchy made the French Revolution of 1789 inevitable. Another one, the unfair social class stratification of France. It is said people in France were divided into classes: nobles, clergy, and the what? The peasants. The nobles and the clergy, who were 2 millions, were celebrating life, and the peasants, who were 23 millions, were made to cry. So it was the question of unfair social class stratification that made the French Revolution of 1789 inevitable, where the majority peasants could not accept to be controlled by the nobles and the clergy. Then the huge influence of the system of government of England on France. It is said England, they had a monarchy in England, but for them they had a constitutional monarchy. So it influenced the French to rise up and stage a revolution, because they were saying, how comes that in England they have a monarchy, but for them they have a what? A constitution. So it is this influence that made the French Revolution of 1789 inevitable. Then the example of the successful American War of Independence, where we are saying the American War of Independence 1776 to 1783, when it succeeded, it inspired the French to rise up. They were saying, as the Americans succeeded, even as we are going to do what? To succeed. You remember Louis XVI sent French soldiers to go and help the Americans get their independence. But when they reached there, they realized that the people they were helping, they were even far better than them. So when they came back in France, they staged a revolution. Then the influence of the political philosophers like Voltaire, Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Voltaire was a restless writer. He could write even in times of sleep. Jean-Jacques Rousseau wrote and said, men are born free, but everywhere they are in chains. All together. So the words of the philosophers made the masses in France to rise up and stage a what? A revolution. Let me tell you, by the time the revolution took place, the philosophers were already dead. But their writings impacted the masses to stage the what? The revolution. Then the weakness in the character of Louis XVI, very weak man. When he took political power, when he was 20 years, he said, it is as if the heaven is going to fall on me today. A man feared the responsibility. It is this that made the peasants to rise up against Louis XVI because he was a very weak man, easily influenced by the wife, Marie Antoinette. We acknowledge that Marie Antoinette was a very beautiful woman, but we blame her beauty of making the king move away from the right principles of controlling a country called what? France. Then the body character of Marie Antoinette, body character. At a time even when people had nothing to eat, you remember they marched and said, we need a decrease in the price of what? Bread. Marie told them, if bread is expensive, try what? Cakes. She could even not calculate the power of her statement. So it is this that made the masses to rise up and stage a what? A revolution. Then the worsening financial crisis and bankruptcy in France. It is said because of the endless wars, like American War of what? Independence. The government used a lot of money to fight different wars. Fighting couldn't be bad. But the problem was one, people had nothing to do what? To eat. And by this time the government wasted a lot of money. It is this that even later led to the dismissal of prominent economists, Necker and what? Turgot, because they advised the Louis XVI to decrease on the expenditure. So we are saying the worsening financial crisis made the French Revolution of 1789 inevitable. Then the catastrophic effect of the Anglo-French Free Trade Treaty of 1786 on the French economy. Louis XVI allowed the British goods to come in France without paying what? Taxes. This annoyed the French traders because their goods were sold expensively, more than the British what? Goods. And it is this that made the French Revolution of 1789 inevitable. Then the bad weather. It is said the bad weather of 1788 to 89, people planted their crops, but the crops did not come out well. It is this that made people to demand the decrease in the price of what? Bread. But of course, the arrogant Marie Antoinette told them, if bread is expensive, try cakes. And this led to the French what? Revolution. Then the increasing grievances of the French army. Let me tell you, the French army had poor pay, poor accommodation. These were pillars of the nation, but they had poor pay and poor what? Accommodation. That's why the army sided on the side of the what? Of the peasants. And by this time, this made the French Revolution of 1789 inevitable. Then, the role of the French encyclopedists, like D'Alembert. These ones read encyclopedia from the first page up to the last. Their ideas were so much respected. They convinced the masses to rise up and stage a what? A revolution. Then the convening and mishandling of the SS General Meeting, May 1789. You remember at a time when things were not moving on well, the king called the SS General Meeting to solve the problems, but he disagreed with the peasants. The peasants went and sat in the tennis court. They said, we are not going to move from here, except bayonet will make us to move from here. Bayonet meant a sword, altogether. By this time, a revolution had started. So the mishandling of the SS General Meeting, you remember the parliament had last sat in 1614, and they were in 1789, 175 years without a parliament sitting. But even when it sat by this time, Louis XVI disagreed with the peasants, and this made the French Revolution of 1789 inevitable. So we are